The moment my brother's wife called me the family's personal savings account, in front of my own mother, at my own dining room table, on my own birthday, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just set down my fork, very slowly, and looked at her. She laughed. My brother laughed. Even my mom gave this little nervous smile like she wasn't sure if it was a joke. It wasn't a joke, and nothing about the next 6 months was funny either. My name is Felicity. I'm 31. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company in Columbus, Ohio, and for the better part of 4 years, I was the financial backbone of a family that never once said thank you. Let me back up. My brother Neil is 35. We grew up pretty close. 2 kids in a small house in the suburbs, parents who worked hard but never had much. When I got my first real job at 24, I was proud. When I got promoted at 26, I was over the moon. I started making good money, moved into my own apartment, built up savings, paid off my student loans 2 years early. I felt like I'd figured something out. Neil hadn't figured anything out. Not yet, anyway. He'd bounced between jobs, warehouse, delivery, a stint at a car dealership that lasted 4 months. He met Brenda when he was 28. She was loud and funny, and I genuinely liked her at first. They got married fast, moved into a rental across town, and had a son, my nephew Cole, almost immediately. The first time I helped them out financially, Cole was about 3 months old. Neil called me, voice low like he didn't want Brenda to hear. Their rent was due Friday and they were $400 short. Could I cover it just this once? I said yes. Of course I said yes. A baby was involved. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. Over the following months, the requests became regular. Sometimes it was rent. Sometimes it was utilities, the electric bill, the gas, once the water, because apparently they hadn't paid in 2 billing cycles. I started just sending money before they even asked because I could feel the calls coming, and it was easier to get ahead of it than to have a whole emotional conversation at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And then somehow, I still can't fully explain how this happened, it became assumed, expected, baked into the way the 4 of us operated as a family unit. I was covering their car insurance, their Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus. I'd gotten them onto my family phone plan because it was cheaper than what they were paying separately, which, yes, meant I was paying their phone bills every month. I was sending $200 on the first of every month, labeled groceries, even though I had no idea what it was actually going toward. I paid for Cole's daycare co-pay twice when Brenda said they were short. I bought Cole's car seat when he outgrew the first one. I bought his Halloween costume and his Easter basket and a very expensive birthday cake shaped like a dinosaur that he probably doesn't even remember. I told myself it was temporary, that they were getting on their feet, that once things stabilized, it would stop. Cole turned 4, then 5. Things did not stabilize. What changed instead was the language around it. It stopped being, "Can you help us out?" It became, "Can you send the thing?" Or just, "Hey, first is coming up?" Like I was a utility service they'd subscribe to. Brenda started talking about my income in this openly casual way that made my skin crawl. She'd say things at family dinners like, "Well, Felicity can afford it," when someone mentioned an expensive activity. Or, "Oh, we don't have to worry, we've got Felicity." My mom thought it was fine. She'd raised us both to look out for each other, she said. Family helps family. Neil needed some extra support right now. Wasn't I grateful that I was in a position to give it? I was. That's the part that people don't understand. I was genuinely grateful for what I had. I didn't mind helping. I wanted to help, but there's a difference between helping and being quietly bled dry by people who never once asked how you were doing, never once said, "We're going to pay you back," never once acknowledged that what you were doing was extraordinary. It just became invisible. It became air. I was just there like a wall socket, always available, never appreciated, only noticed when something stopped working. I started noticing small things. My own savings rate had dropped. I'd wanted to put a down payment on a condo by the time I was 30. I was 31 now, and that felt impossibly far away. I'd had to put off a dental procedure I needed because I didn't have the out-of-pocket in the right account that month. I'd turned down a trip with a college friend because I told myself I couldn't afford it, and then 2 days later sent Neil $250 for car trouble. I was tired. I was so tired. But I didn't know how to stop. It had gone on so long that stopping felt like an act of aggression, like I'd be the one doing something wrong. Then came my birthday dinner. I planned it myself, of course I had. I'd made a reservation at Maro's, a nice restaurant downtown. Nothing outrageous, but the kind of place where the pasta is made in-house and the lighting is warm and you feel like a person who has her life together. I'd invited my mom, Neil, and Brenda, and my best friend, Hallie. I was turning 31, and I wanted a real meal and maybe a glass of wine and one evening where everything felt okay. We ordered appetizers. I had the burrata. Cole sat between Neil and Brenda, more interested in the bread basket than anything else, which was honestly relatable. The conversation was fine. Catching up, my mom talking about her garden, Hallie telling a story about a coworker that had everyone laughing. Then the entrees arrived. Neil had ordered the ribeye. Brenda had ordered the salmon. They were the two most expensive items on the menu. I noticed but said nothing because it was my birthday and I was trying to be gracious and the whole evening was already on my card anyway. I'd offered to cover dinner when I made the reservation and everyone had accepted without hesitation. Brenda was cutting her salmon when she said it. She was talking to my mom, not even looking at me, which somehow made it worse. She was saying something about wanting to redecorate Cole's room, new curtains or something, and she said, laughing, casual, like it was the funniest thing in the world. I told Neil we'd just ask Felicity. She's basically our personal savings account. Girl doesn't even know what to do with all that money. My mom laughed, that small, nervous laugh. Neil smiled into his ribeye. Cole said, "What's a savings account?" And I set down my fork. I didn't say anything right away. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, set it back down. The table had gone slightly quiet in that way where everyone knows a temperature shift has happened, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. Brenda looked up. She must have seen something on my face because her smile flickered. I said very quietly, "I'm curious what gave you the impression that I don't know what to do with my money." She blinked. "It was just a joke, Felicity." "Was it?" "Oh, come on, you know what I meant." I looked at her for a moment. Then I smiled. Not a warm smile. "I think I do know what you meant, actually. That's the part that's interesting." My mom said my name in that particular tone, the warning tone. I picked my fork back up and finished my burrata. I didn't say anything else for the rest of the first course. But I'd already made a decision. I want to be clear about something. The savings account comment was not the first thing Brenda had ever said that stung. It was maybe the fifth or sixth, but it was the first one she'd said in public with that particular confidence. The confidence of someone who believes there are zero consequences for what she's saying. And that confidence told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed me. I was not a person she respected. I was a resource she managed. The next morning was a Saturday. I got up early, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and I started going through everything. I mean everything. I pulled up 4 years of bank statements. I had not done this in a long time because I think some part of me had not wanted to see the total. I opened a spreadsheet and I started entering numbers. 4 years of monthly grocery transfers, around $11,000. Rent contributions across various months, roughly $8,000. Utilities, direct payments, around $3,000. Phone plan, 4 years, just over $4,000. Streaming services, another $1,800 or so. Coal-related expenses, daycare, clothing, gear, activities, approximately $6,000. Random one-offs, car trouble, medical copays, just this once emergencies, over $5,000. When I added it up, I sat very still for a long moment. Over the course of 4 years, I had sent or spent on behalf of my brother and his wife approximately $39,000. $39,000. I was 27 when I started. I was 31 now. That money was supposed to be my condo down payment. That was my future, sitting in someone else's pocket, and they were laughing about it at my birthday dinner. I closed my laptop. I called Hallie. She didn't say, "I told you so," even though she absolutely had told me so multiple times, with increasing specificity. She just listened, and when I was done talking, she said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to stop," I said. "Okay," she said, "so stop." It sounds simple when someone says it like that. It is not simple. What I was untangling was not just financial transactions, it was 4 years of emotional infrastructure. I was the person who caught them. If I stepped back, what happened? I kept turning that question over and over, and then I realized that question wasn't mine to answer. What happened to them when I stopped was their problem. I'd been making it my problem for 4 years. I was done. I did not make a dramatic announcement. I did not call Neil and deliver a speech. I thought about it, but the more I imagined that conversation, the more I knew it would dissolve into Brenda, yelling and my mom crying and Neil going silent, and nothing would actually change. Instead, I acted, quietly. The way I'd been trained to do everything in that family, quietly, without acknowledgement, without anyone noticing until it was already done. The first of the following month came and I didn't send the grocery transfer. I waited. My phone didn't ring until the 4th. Neil texted, "Hey, did you forget the thing?" I read the message. I set my phone down. I did not respond. He texted again on the 6th. "Hello?" On the 7th, Brenda called. I let it go to voicemail. She did not leave one. On the 8th, Neil called. I answered this time. "What's going on?" he said. "Is something wrong?" "No," I said. "I'm just not going to be sending money anymore." Silence. "What?" "I'm not going to be sending the monthly transfers. I'm also going to need to remove you and Brenda from the phone plan. I'll give you a heads up before I do that so you have time to set something else up. Same with the streaming services." More silence. Then, "Is this because of what Brenda said at dinner?" "I've been thinking about this for a while." Felicity. His voice had shifted into something low and careful, the voice he used when he was trying to manage a situation. "We need that money, you know that." "I know you've been using it," I said. "I'm not sure need is the right word anymore." "Cole is in school now. Do you know how much his after-school program costs?" "That's something you'll need to figure out," I said. "You're both adults. Neil, I love you. I'm not doing this out of anger. But I've been covering your household expenses for 4 years and I can't keep doing it." He hung up. My mom called an hour later. Someone had gotten to her fast. She was upset. That particular brand of upset that wasn't quite anger, more like disappointment deployed as a weapon. She said I was being cruel. That Neil and Brenda were struggling. That family was supposed to come first. That I, of all people, knew what it was like to need help. I let her finish. Then I said, "Mom, I've given them close to $40,000 over the past 4 years. Quiet. $40,000, I said again, letting it land. I did the math this week. That's not me being unable to help. That's me having helped enormously for a very long time. She didn't have a quick answer for that. The next few weeks were uncomfortable. Neil and I didn't talk. Brenda unfollowed me on Instagram, which, honestly, was a relief. My mom called a few more times, always with some version of "can't you just," and I always said some version of "can't you just," and I always said some version of "no." The streaming services got canceled on my end. The phone plan, I gave them a 30-day notice as promised, and they moved to their own plan, which apparently they were capable of doing when they had to. What I didn't expect was what happened about 6 weeks in. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't pick up. When I did, it was a woman who identified herself as a collections representative from a credit card company. She was calling about an authorized user account, one that had been opened in my name, or rather, with my social security number as a secondary account holder, on a credit card that had a balance of just over $11,000. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had never opened that account. I had never authorized it. After 3 very long phone calls with the credit card company's fraud department, here is what I pieced together. At some point, the account had been open for about 2 years. My social security number had been used to add me as an authorized user to a card in Brenda's name. The card had been maxed out. Brenda had made minimum payments for a while and then stopped. The debt had gone to collections, and because my information was on the account, it had shown up on my credit. I sat in my car in a parking garage after the last of those calls, and I just stared at the concrete wall in front of me for probably 10 minutes. She hadn't just been taking the money I voluntarily sent. She'd been using my identity to borrow more. I called a consumer attorney that same afternoon. I'd looked one up before I even left the parking garage. His name was on a list I found through the Ohio State Bar website. His assistant said he could do a consultation Friday. I went Friday. I brought printed copies of everything: my bank statements, the credit card records, the collections notice, the fraud department case number, all of it. He looked through everything and said I had a clear case for identity theft and unauthorized use of credit. He said we could pursue it criminally or civilly or both. He said the word both with a kind of calm specificity that I appreciated. I didn't go to the police first. I want to be honest about that. There was a part of me that still didn't want to blow up my brother's life. There was a part of me that kept thinking about Cole, who was 5 and hadn't done anything wrong. I went back and forth on it for a week. What settled it was finding out that the credit damage had affected my mortgage pre-approval. I'd finally, after all of this, sat down with a mortgage broker to actually run the numbers on that condo I'd been putting off, and she'd flagged the collections account and said it was going to affect what I could qualify for until it was resolved. 4 years of scrimping on my own future, and even now, even after I'd stopped, there was still a hand in my pocket. That was when I called the attorney back and told him to proceed. What happened over the following 3 months was not dramatic in the Hollywood sense. There was no courtroom moment, no breakdown, no tearful confession over coffee. What there was, a formal fraud dispute that I filed with all 3 credit bureaus, simultaneously, a civil demand letter from my attorney to Brenda, not Neil, Brenda, because the card was in her name and she was the one who had set it up, and a notification to the police that I was filing a report. Brenda called me once during this period. Just once. She was not crying. She was not apologetic. She was angry in this very focused way, and she said that I was trying to destroy her family and that she couldn't believe I would do this over a credit card thing. I said, it's not a credit card thing, it's identity theft. Those are different. She said Neil knew nothing about it. I didn't believe her, but I also didn't argue the point because it wasn't what mattered. My attorney settled the civil matter out of court. Brenda agreed to have the account closed, the debt removed from my credit report, and to repay me a portion of the collections balance. Not $39,000, not even close, but enough to hurt. The criminal complaint was still open, and my attorney told me that having it open was actually useful leverage, which it clearly had been. My credit score, once the fraudulent account was fully disputed and removed, recovered within about 4 months. I checked it on a Tuesday morning in October and just looked at that number for a long time. It was better than it had been in 2 years. I closed my laptop, got up, made more coffee, and called the mortgage broker back. My mom and I went through a period that I can only describe as a long, slow thaw. She'd been so sure I was being vindictive. I think finding out about the credit card was genuinely shocking to her. She'd known Brenda was difficult, but she hadn't imagined this. We had a real conversation about it, the kind we hadn't had in years. She said she was sorry she'd pushed so hard for me to keep helping. I said I understood why she did it. We sat with that for a while. Neil and I have not spoken since I filed the fraud report. I don't know if we ever will, not in the old way. I've thought about it. I genuinely don't know if he knew about the credit card or not. Maybe that's something I'll never know for certain. I do know that for years, he watched his wife treat me like a resource and said nothing. That's its own thing, separate from the card. I'm not ready to pretend it isn't. Cole sent me a drawing through my mom a few weeks after everything ended. He'd drawn our family, my mom, Neil, Brenda, himself, me, outside a house in crayon. He'd labeled everyone in his crooked 5-year-old handwriting. He'd spelled my name Felicity. I put it on my refrigerator. I'm not going to tell you I feel nothing. I'm not going to wrap this up with a lesson or a tidy sentence about how it made me stronger, because I'm still too close to it and I'm not sure strength is the right frame. What I feel, mostly, is clear. For the first time in 4 years, I know exactly what I have and where it's going and who it belongs to. Last month, I signed the papers on a one-bedroom condo on the north side of Columbus. Third floor, big windows, hardwood floors in the living room. It needs a little work, the kitchen backsplash is not my taste, and there's a bathroom I want to repaint. But it's mine. I walked through it alone the first time with the keys in my hand, and the thing I felt wasn't triumph or vindication, it was quieter than that. It felt like finally getting something back that had always been mine. There's a version of this story where I'm the villain. I know that. Brenda would tell it that way. That I pulled the rug out from under a family with a young child. That I chose money over blood. That I was cold and calculating and cruel. I've thought about that version a lot. I don't think it's true, but I understand why it exists. What I've come to believe is that what happened between me and my brother's family wasn't just about money. It was about what happens when you let your kindness run on autopilot for so long that it stops being kindness and starts being a habit other people budget around. I wasn't generous anymore. I was predictable, and there's a difference. The hardest thing to reckon with wasn't Brenda. She was who she was, and honestly, the credit card, as awful as it was, made everything clear in a way that years of smaller moments hadn't. The hardest thing was accepting that I had participated in this. Not in what Brenda did with my social security number, that was hers alone, but in the 4 years of monthly transfers, the paid phone bills, the dinosaur birthday cake. I had kept saying yes when the right answer, the honest answer, was I can help you once. But after that, this has to come from you. I never said that. I kept absorbing the discomfort of their instability so I didn't have to have a hard conversation, and I told myself it was love. That's not love. That's avoidance dressed up as generosity. What I know now, and I mean know, not just intellectually agree with, is that doing the right thing is rarely the comfortable thing. Walking away from that monthly transfer felt like cruelty in the moment. It felt like I was breaking something. But the thing I was actually breaking was a dynamic that had been breaking me for years, quietly, in ways I'd been too tired to look at directly. The discomfort I felt when I stopped sending money was nothing compared to the damage I'd been absorbing by continuing. There's something I keep coming back to, too, about clarity, not intelligence in the way we usually mean it. Grades, job titles, knowing the right answers, but the kind of clear-eyed thinking that's willing to look at an uncomfortable truth and not flinch. I had the spreadsheet numbers in front of me a long time before I actually sat down and added them up. I knew, somewhere, what the total was going to be. I just didn't want to see it. The day I finally let myself see it was the day things started to change. And then there's the longer road, the part after the hard decision, when you have to actually live with it. Neil and I still don't talk. My mom and I are finding our way back to each other slowly. Cole sent me that crayon drawing and I cried a little. I'm not going to lie about that. None of it resolved neatly. The condo is mine, but I didn't get there without losing something. I think that's just how it works. Real change costs something, and whatever it costs, you have to decide if what's on the other side is worth it. For me it was the quiet of my own apartment, the numbers in my own account, the mortgage with only my name on it. These aren't small things. They're what 4 years of saying yes to everyone else had been quietly spending down. Getting them back didn't feel like winning. It felt like finally being honest about what I was worth.